So, ladies and gentlemen, dear guests, good morning. Warm welcome to our conference today titled Europe That Young Generation of Kosovo Would Like to See. I am Ambassador Laszlo Domjan, EU Integration Advisor to the Government of Kosovo, and today I have the pleasure to to moderate this discussion. I am to welcome here in the auditorium of the Rochester Institute of Technology in Kosovo our guests from the embassies delegated to Prishtina, the distinguished members of the panel, and especially students from the universities of Kosovo who are representing today the youth of the country. I am also to extend our virtual welcome to those who are following us online. Ladies and gentlemen, please be aware that this event is directly linked to the conference on the future of Europe, launched by the European Union on the 9th of May this year. This conference is a citizen-led series of debates and discussions that will enable people from across Europe to share their ideas and help shape a common future. By spring 2022, the conference is expected to reach conclusions and provide guidance on the future of Europe. The aim is to discuss and collect views from European citizens on what matters to them about the future of the continent. Those views will dictate the conference's reform recommendations. For your information, to date, more than 4,000 events has been organized, including this one, attended by more than 210,000 people, and nearly 17,500 comments and more than 10,000 ideas have been recorded and registered. Accordingly, your ideas today will be collected, analyzed, and published on the digital platform throughout the conference. This will then feed into the discussions taking place in the European citizens' panels and the plenaries. A feedback mechanism will ensure that the ideas expressed during the conference events result in concrete recommendations for EU action. The final outcomes of the conference will be presented in a report to the presidents of the European Parliament, the Council, and the Commission. These three institutions will then examine swiftly how to follow up effectively to this report. Dear guests, ladies and gentlemen, we organizers and the hosts of today's event, namely the Hungarian Embassy in Prishtina and the Rochester Institute of Technology in Kosovo, are absolutely convinced that the Western Balkans, including Kosovo, are an integral part of Europe in historical, economic, cultural, and geopolitical terms. For that reason, we want young people in Kosovo to have their say and proposals on their future in Europe. This is the main objective of today's conference. Your opinion matters and is important to us, so be active and constructive during this discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, before we get started, I announce that Mr. Olivier Várhelyi, EU Commissioner for Neighbourhood and Enlargement, has sent us an exclusive video message from Brussels. Let's see that first.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the European Union launched the Conference on the Future of Europe as a broad reflection on how to best address the global challenges, including climate change, digitalization, and security. The involvement of the people in the Western Balkans in this debate confirms that we want to build our future together and that the future of the Western Balkans lies in the EU. The Conference on the Future of Europe offers multiple opportunities to reflect on how we want our common future to be, how we can best move forward together, not only to fulfill the promises and commitments we have made, but also what kind of Europe we want to build and have together. I invite you to take part and make your voice heard. We want to hear from you, the young people of Kosovo and the region as a whole. Young people are the most valuable asset Kosovo has. Your voice, ideas, and active participation is essential for addressing numerous challenges, from economic development through making state institutions more responsive to citizens' needs, to genuine reconciliation in the region. The EU supports Kosovo's youth through projects worth currently over 50 million euros. Those aim to develop your skills for employment, social inclusion, and democratic participation. It is an investment in the generations to come that should benefit all. For example, through the implementation of the Youth Guarantee, we aim at boosting employment possibilities for Kosovo youth, particularly those with fewer opportunities. Through our Young Cell scholarships and Erasmus Plus program, we have made possible for more than 2,300 youth to continue their studies across the EU and return home to share their experience and knowledge. I also hope that Kosovo young people will be able to travel soon visa-free to the EU and have even more contacts with their peers in the Union. And we are boosting the economic development of the region and of Kosovo to offer you all possible opportunities at home. Our economic and investment plan for the Western Balkans will mobilize up to 30 billion euros, 1/3 for the region's GDP, in investments. This package will close the economic development gap with the EU, help with the recovery, and with progress on the path to the EU. We believe in you, and we look forward to your ideas and those of your peers from the rest of the region on how best to build together the future of Europe, because this is our common future.
Thank you very much. And now I invite our hosts for their opening remarks. First, His Excellency József Bence, Ambassador of Hungary in Prishtina. Excellency, the floor is yours.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, Ambassador. Dear guests, distinguished guests, dear ambassadors, dear professor, dear deputy minister, dear all guests, dear all young friends. I think after this message of Mr. Varhey, I am very easy situation because I can give only one sentence. I agree. But Ambassador said, I am organizer. I have to give more information. Thank you very much. It is a great all panelists, a great young people. I think the young people are really future. Future of the Kosovo, future of the Europe. I read the media, Pastor Domian talk about the future of Europe conference. It is very important. We would like to talk today only the education, culture, and sport area. It is not too sensitive, Christian, but I think it's very important because my philosophy, like ambassador, we have to stand with three legs: traditional diplomacy, economic diplomacy, and culture diplomacy. Culture diplomacy is soft diplomacy, and if we could do very excellent, it is a good chance to come closer the all citizens of Europe. Because the singing, dancing, music is their language. My language is Hungarian. Their language is Albanian and Serbian, and other countries with other languages. Their language and culture, language is their language. We try to do on this area several steps in the last time. I'd like to give you some examples. Last October, we made a bilateral agreement of higher education. It is a good chance to cooperate with our universities. And last October, we made other agreement about the still a Hungary scholarship project. Very popular in Kosovo. We increased the limit from 50 to 75. The Hungarian government can accept every year 75 students from Kosovo, bachelor, master, and PhD degree. It is totally free. And we worked very hard to make a bilateral agreement about the culture and sport. This is ready. I'm waiting for the signing ceremony, maybe next year in January. We try to show it is a good way between the Kosovo and Hungary. I think today it's very important the young generation, can give several questions to the panelists and to give really opinion. What could be the future of Europe? Kosovo, future of Europe, or country, the Western Balkans, future of Europe, is very important. Hungarian government decided that all ambassadors in the Western Balkan countries have to organize one project because we would like to show and to push the Western Balkan Christian for the conference of the future of Europe. I wish you good work and success. Thank you very much, Ambassador. And finally, I'd like to thanks that to accept our invitation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Excellency. And now I offer the floor to Mr. Kamal Shahravi, the interim president and the dean of Rochester Institute of Technology.
I did those things because I have more gray hair. Thank you very much. Welcome to RITK, to this important conference. I'm so proud to be over here because this is the work that's done by our students. when the embassy of Hungary reached out and they said, okay, they have this plan, they need, somebody organize it and so. And the theme of the conference was the Europe that the young generation of Kosovo would like to see. I said, okay, so let's talk about the young generation of the Kosovo should be our students. Although I'm young too. Okay? Don't, get that wrong. When I stopped college, that was when I was 20 years old, my age stopped at that point. Okay? So when they asked me how old I am, I said I'm 21-year-old with 40 years of experience. I had experience, my age stopped at 21. Therefore, always I'll be young. And then I reached out to two of the students, which basically they run a student government. I said, okay, this activity needs to be run. Okay? And I called Fiorita and Doreen Chala. Okay, where are they hiding? Okay, I see her over there. Okay, and see, with the face mask, sometimes it's difficult to recognize them. I said, okay, guys, this is your game to play. And what they did, they shipped me out immediately. Okay? As soon as they got the assignment, they got the round-trip ticket for me to US. I left that day, and I came back last night. Okay, that's how they treat me. They say, okay, you have to be out in order for us to do it. Thank you, guys. You did a wonderful job as usual, and that's normal for a student from RIT Kosovo. Anytime you have a task, give it to them. They get it done for you. Now, this is important. Okay, this is very important when you're talking about the Europe, Kosovo, future of the Kosovo, and the Europe itself. Europe this day has a lot of challenges in their hands. Okay? And the challenges that they have, that they're dealing with, which all of us, we see that on the TV and hear on the radio and the newspaper, especially on the border, the issue of the border that exists. All the, situation that's happening around the world is going to impact Europe, it impact United States and so. Therefore, they have those challenges in their hand. Then on top of that, we had the COVID, right? Okay. All of us were happy that COVID, we have the vaccine is under control now. Now, most recently, you start hearing the news. The new version of it is now coming. And we don't know what's going to happen. That's a new challenge in their hand. Okay. And Western Balkan, of course, been a challenge by itself. Okay. What we like to see is we're not there yet. Okay. We are moving in the right direction. We are moving in the right direction, especially Kosovo, which I consider it a heart in the Balkan region. The way they're acting and the way they're working on everything, it's in the right direction. And here's an example of that. When we ask about the opinion of the young generation and what they want to see in future, immediately they jump on it. And they organize everything. They reach out to all the stakeholders to make sure that everybody is heard. Okay? Again, I welcome you over here. You will have a wonderful conference. And you're always, of course, welcome to come to RIT Kosovo. If you're not a student here, okay, always there is an opening. We can admit you, okay, and we don't have age restriction. Okay, don't worry, you can always come over here. And very soon you're gonna see the new building, which I have to thank our U.S. Embassy that they're funding. We're gonna get the new building, and part of that new building is a human rights center, which is gonna address many of these issues that globally we're facing. Okay. Women Rights Center, Human Rights Center, another piece of building is going to be Peace and Conflict Center, which you hear the conflict all over the place, and we will address those, at least here in the West Balkans. Again, thank you very much. I wish you a wonderful conference today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dean, for your words and even assuring me that I also belong to the young generation. Well, we have an old say that you are as old as you feel so. So let's continue with the program today and welcome the distinguished members of the panels. First of all, Ambassador Thomas Sunyog, who took up the post of head of EU office in Kosovo and EU special representative on the 1st of September 2020. Ambassador, please have your seat and podium. We are also fortunate in having with us today Deputy Minister Bukajin Pupovci from the Ministry of Education, Science, Technology and Innovation. So please have your seat. And from the civil society, I welcome Ms. Leonora Crueziu, Executive Director of Prishtina Institute for Political Studies. And last but not least, a former graduate from the Rochester Institute of Technology, Mr. Eris Chunaku, who also serves as a young European ambassador for Kosovo. Thank you very much for accepting the invitation. Please have your seat. Ladies and gentlemen, as a warm-up, I would leave the floor to the panelists to express their thoughts on the topic. First, I'm turning to Ambassador Sunil. The Commissioner, in his video message, sent and comprised all the support what the European Union is or will be providing to the region and to Kosovo to boost the integration of the region and the country itself. What could you add to those thoughts, please?
Thank you, Laszlo. It's kind of difficult to add anything to the words of my boss, but I will still try. I would first of all like to warmly thank the Hungarian Embassy and the Rochester Institute of Technology in Kosovo for taking this initiative to organize the panel discussion contributing to the conference on the future of Europe. I would also like to thank Commissioner Varhey for his speech and for once again reaffirming the EU's strong support for Western Balkans countries and more particularly for the youth. I'm truly honored to be in this panel with very distinguished speakers. These events are organized with the purpose to give Western Balkans a say in the conversation about our common European future, and especially to find out how youth of the Kosovo sees Europe and their future as part of Europe. The EU is ready to support, engage and listen to people and civil society. As the conference's motto says, the future is in your hands. This is why I'm here today in support of this event and to reiterate that we are talking about the future of Europe, of which Kosovo and other countries in the region are part of. As the EU ambassador in Kosovo and previously elsewhere in the region, I have met many young people and listened to their concerns. All of them have a strong interest and very concrete ideas on how to meaningfully participate in building a better, a stronger Europe. I'm thus very glad to have a voice of the youth today heard, represented among this panel. The young women and men are the most valuable asset Kosovo has, especially having in mind that Kosovo has the youngest population in Europe. Your creativity, openness, participation and education can not only truly contribute to reconciliation, but also strengthen all the countries in the region and serve as a driving force for the entire European continent. In his video message, Commissioner Varhey mentioned all the EU investments and support for young people. And the EU will continue this support. What I would like to learn today is what is young people's perspective on our common and shared Europe. The people from the EU and from the Western Balkans share the same continent, share the same values, care about the same issues, breathe the same air, face common challenges, and should look for solutions together. And those are challenges going beyond just the Western Balkans and beyond the enlargement issue. For example, how to tackle the issue of climate change, how to give better education opportunities for young people. And finally, how to strengthen our rule of law as is a cornerstone of a stable and well-functioning society. This is an area where each of the Western Balkan countries has significant room for improvement, especially fighting against corruption, fighting against organized crime, and improving media freedom should be at the top of the list. My hope is that we will share and cherish mutual understanding of our values: human rights, democracy, rule of law, the very ideas that the EU stands for, the very ideas that the EU is based on. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador Synod. And now I'm turning to Mr. Pupovci, who is now representing the government as a deputy minister, but you are double-headed today as a professor, long-lasting history in education. How do you see the perspective of the young generation here in Kosovo?
Thank you very much. So, dear ambassadors, representatives of diplomatic offices, Dean, my fellow panel members, dear students, I'm very pleased to participate in this discussion, which takes place on the verge of European Year of Youth, which is year 2022. And I see this as a very good opportunity to hear from young Kosovans what they think of Europe and how would they shape Europe if they were in position to do that, which is unfortunately currently not the case. As Commissioner mentioned, there are plans to review EU visa policies, but I have to stress that young Kosovans are the only young people in Europe who still cannot freely travel to Europe, which I assume gives to a lot of them a sense of exclusion. Nevertheless, many young people in Kosovo seek the opportunities in Europe, either to continue their education or get jobs and settle there. Despite high youth unemployment in Kosovo, this country suffers from the skills gap, which means that many businesses cannot get qualified labor force necessary for their normal operation. And it goes without saying that this is a major impediment to the development of the country. And also that the responsibility for this situation to a large extent rests with the education sector. We are aware of deficiencies in our education system and are working together with our European and international partners to improve the situation. However, we feel that as a country, we are already in competition with developed EU countries for qualified labor force. And that competition will become even more fierce in the coming years as European economies recover from the effects of the pandemic. In that scenario, one would expect that our young people will see more opportunities in Europe, and their European experience will become very valuable to the development and integration of our country, like it has been so far. So the question is how Europe, what Europe young Kosovans would like to see, and how Europe young Kosovans would like to see looks like. Instead of responding to this question, I think it is fair to ask the young people. So we have many of them here today, and it is the duty of the government to expand the range of opportunities for young people, but also encourage them to express their views in relation to political and social developments. I guess young people who are present today will have messages for decision makers within their own country, but also for decision makers in European capitals and the European capital, I mean Brussels. And I look forward to listening to their voice.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Minister. Ms. Kriesiu, you have been involved in the civil society developments and engaged with multiple international organizations. How do you see the perspective of the youngsters here in Kosovo?
Thank you, Ambassador. It's, it is a great pleasure that we are here today discussing the vision for the future of Europe and how young Kosovars see their role in shaping this future. I have been working with civil society for over 20 years now in a political education program supported by Council of Europe, and have been working with young people, with many young people that have gone through the program. And I must say that the vision of young Kosovars are no different than visions that their peers in Europe share. The problems are similar, but the possibilities for young Kosovars changing is threefold different. Looking how we want to see Europe and shape Europe from Kosovo is entirely different as looking at from Brussels, London, Frankfurt, or even a regional country. I am from civil society, and I could be a little bit free to explore on some of the challenges that Kosovo faces, not only youth. Kosovars have to think initially from a Kosovo state of view. We have unfinished, unresolved issues as Kosovars. We're dealing with Kosovo-Serbia dialogue, which is the first obstacle. Where the second layer is the EU integration perspective, which rightly was said, and we hope that we will share in a common in a near future the same perspective as other countries of the region. And the third problem that we face are the 5 non-recognizers within EU. So the problems of Kosovars, if you ask us today, how do we foresee the future of Kosovars in Europe, or what Europe we would like to see, is initially we think of these problems, and then we come to green Europe, to environmental issues, to social and economic development that professors and previous speakers mentioned. It's surprisingly that in all polls that were done in Kosovo, Kosovars are among the highest rated population in the Balkans that have a high support for EU integration. And this is, I think, the common ground that probably the entire population has consensus on. By anchoring to EU integration and committing to the full conditionality that we have from the Western allies, we have managed to build the state where we are today and build democracy in Kosovo. But democracy in Kosovo comes with a price and high cost. And that's why the clear European perspective for young generations is very, very important. As Professor Bukovci mentioned, Kosovars are the only people that cannot travel freely in Europe. This is very, very important for a young Kosovar to have a vision of Europe, to be freely and travel and see and look for opportunities that Professor was discussing. Before talking about the ideas, I think there's a list of challenges that we are facing, and that I urge the young people of Kosovo to think about these problems as well. As civil society, I think there's a huge role of young people in Kosovo to keep and guarding the values that we have embraced and are are in our constitution, the respect for minority rights, and to push forward the Kosovo project as a multi-ethnic state. So I think this is very important for the young generations to understand and nurture and work on this regard. How they see Europe, I would really love them to say. There's a huge potential in Kosovo's youth. There are lots of ideas. We've been working with young people for many, many years, and I can assure you that environment, digitalization, art, security are issues that young Kosovars are really thinking of and working on these directions. We have to just know how to bring these people to the decision-making process. Thank you. I will leave it here, and then we'll be glad to discuss with them.
Thank you very much, Ms. Krivesiu. Alice, you are an authentic representation of the population to whom what we are talking about. You've just graduated from the university. You are now on the labor market. How do you see the prosperity of the Kosovo youngsters throughout your personal example?
First off, thank you very much for having me, and thank you all for being here as well. I don't have the experience and the knowledge that the panelists here have, but what I do have is the viewpoint of Kosovo's youth. I am part of the Young European Ambassadors Program, which is a program which gathers young people from the Western Balkans in a network where we share our ideas, our viewpoints that we have, and truly connect with one another. I think what this discussion here what we can have as young people is get more impact into our country. I think in terms of where our country is and where it can go as well, I blame a little bit the youth of Kosovo as well, because I really think that we have to be more active and share our voice into the things that we care about. Whether that is the environment, whether that is education, sport, the culture that we have here. I think that Kosovo's youth don't really realize the power that they have in shaping that future for Kosovo. So I think it starts here. It starts with the young people of Kosovo, and then it goes out into Europe. In terms of your question as well, yes, I graduated in 2019. I think from graduating from RIT, there's a better, I would say, pool of opportunities that you have in the job market, because from my perspective and from what I've seen as well, it's a better preparation into the job market as well. I currently work as an HR specialist for an IT company here in Kosovo, and oftentimes I see that gap that you're talking of what people learn in university or schools and what the job market wants them to know, or where the job market is going as well. So, yeah,
Thank you very much. Now it's time for the audience to express your views and opinion on the issues. Now we have learned about a massive, reliable European Union package on how to boost the development here in the region, and also how to integrate Kosovo to the European Union. We learned about the importance of education, employment, qualified labor force, EU integration, traditions, security, and some patriotism. How do you see that? How do you see that, ladies and gentlemen? Please, the floor is yours. Please raise your hand and wait for the microphone. Yes, please.
Okay, so hello everyone.
Could you take your mask off, please, just to be more articulated?
Okay, so can you hear me better now?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm Isa Bayyine. I'm a junior at RIT University here. And hearing you and your viewpoints, I wanted to ask about, I've taken part to some cultural events and learning outside of Kosovo in Europe. And I've had the opportunity to meet other people from Europe and share cultural views and all of that. I wanted to ask you, is there going to be other events that are going to be organized to share values with each other rather than those that we have until now?
Thank you very much. I propose to collect 2-3 questions and then I give the floor to the panel. Please.
Hello everyone, I'm Hania Duhai and I had first of all I would like to thank all the panelists for their speech, but especially Deputy Minister Ms. Povsi for raising a question and kind of implying us in it. I have a question on terms of what are some specific targets on the education workforce in terms of what we see every day is the low quality in education, and this is directly implied to our youth as the quality we are inferred to. What we see also is syndicates of teachers who do blackmail the government, but in the same time do not imply to doing their work as they are supposed to be. How about wanting them to take responsibility, and how about the concrete steps in terms of improving the education quality in Kosovo? This is one of my main concerns, and this is what I want to raise. And this is certainly where I think everything should start off. The reform, the change in the public educational system. I certainly feel privileged to be in a institute, in a university where as a alumni said, we are very much more prepared for the work market, for the work labor, compared to the public universities and the quality of education in general. So this is my question, and thank you.
Thank you very much. Please.
Should I continue?
Yes, please.
Hi everyone, I'm Alisa Ramadani. I'm also an RITK alumni. Thank you for your insights and excellent topic, and thank you for being here. However, I do see that there is a lot of focus on visa liberalization. Not that it's not important. I do see an issue with it that we don't have it still, and I understand the concerns. However, I don't think, at least in my opinion, I don't think it's the fact that people can travel. It's the fact that people feel excluded as a nation per se, and the whole of Western Balkans. However, although this is a very important issue and we should really address this, I do have some concerns of my own as of, for example, why don't we have more foreign investments in Kosovo, so people that are actually trained for many jobs cannot do them here, whereas if European states could offer them in Kosovo, we wouldn't have people leave in other states and we would have a better economy overall. This is just one example of one of my concerns. Maybe this would go more towards Ms. Crezio and Eres as well, since Ms. Crezio works with the civil society and Eres you work with the youth. What have you gathered? What are other concerns other than visa liberalization from the youth? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. The next one, please. So we've got questions, impressions about cultural events, quality education to improve the labor force, free travel, we are excluded or not. So a lot of exciting questions. To whom shall I offer the floor first to react from the panel? Mr. Ambassador?
Thank you. Thank you for those interesting questions. Maybe I would address or try to address three of them. On visa liberalization, again, this is the issue which is certainly very high on everybody's mind, including mine. But again, as I mentioned several times and tried to explain to everybody I'm meeting, including the government officials, this is an issue which needs to be formally decided by Council of Ministers of EU member states. So it's not actually the EU as such, or EU as an institution. It's basically 27 member states who needs to sit together and say, okay, this is the decision because we feel comfortable that Kosovo is the reliable partner. So it's actually requires some kind of coordination between EU institutions, European Commission, Parliament and others, but also Kosovo government, actually trying to communicate with those 27 member states to persuade all of them basically that they can take this decision. And I hope certainly as commissioners that it will be done early or as soon as possible. The second issue, very interesting one, the foreign investment. I think that, of course, there is a number of things that is decisive for foreign investors to come to a country and invest. Obviously, the one issue which needs to be there is legal settlement. And apparently, if you don't have the legal settlement, basic legal settlement, the investors might be hesitant to come. It's not only about the rule of law, but it's about the basic kind of issues which we were mentioned. But also, you need to have a sufficient market. Why should an investor who is coming, let's say, from Japan or US or anywhere else, look specifically at Kosovo? Is it what kind of market is 2 million people, which the level of development which is relatively low? So it needs to also this increased number of foreign investments, according to me, also requires certain regional kind of interaction and coordination. Because yes, if it is a market of the whole Western Balkans 6 countries, then yes, it can be interesting. If it is just a market for 1.7 million people, that might probably not be decisive for these investors. And obviously, there need to be a consistent government policy, inviting and giving some incentives to those foreign investors to come. So there need to be several things to happen if you have want to have a successful kind of economy which is attractive for foreign investors. Finally, maybe before giving the floor to the competent person here on education reforms, I agree fully that Kosovo needs a substantial education reform because I think that it's paradoxical that Kosovo has by far the lowest education on preschool. It's only 8% of children below 5 years or below 6 years who actually attend any preschool kind of education, which is actually unique in the whole Europe. It's basically the average number is 50 or even more. On the other end of the spectrum, Kosovo also has more than twice as many of university graduates as the European average. So it's clearly a system which is disbalanced. Kosovo needs to, I think, invest much more into the basic things, like again preschool education and basic school education, rather than to create more and more kind of university graduates which would not have enough places to kind of get employed. So I think that this requires a basic kind of rethink of the things. But at the same time, that also we are ready to support that. We are building kindergartens, we are ready to invest into schools, but we also need a kind of strong leadership and ownership of the reform from the government. So we are kind of expecting the government to tell us, let's say, you have the funds, so let's do this and that together. And we are ready for that. I hope that in the near future, next year, we can agree on some joint targets and start to implement the reforms, which again really are necessary. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chinapur.
So I'll start off with the first question, which was related to the events that could happen and share ideas with other people as well. I wanted to share a story at first. I recently was as a speaker in an event called European Youth Event in Strasbourg in France at the European Parliament, and we were there as a group for from the Balkans. But since Kosovo isn't recognized, me and my other colleagues from Kosovo and Bosnia and Herzegovina, we couldn't get sponsorship from the event. So I think that also it also relates to what you talked as well about being inclusive. I think that's what the young people of Kosovo want to see in Europe. A Europe which cares for Kosovo. And until now, I think many of us have seen that with embassies who have sponsored either NGOs or events or Erasmus Plus and other great opportunities as well. And I think there's still missing that inclusiveness of Kosovo as a state and Kosovo's youth matters. So that's on for the event. In terms of visa liberalizations, I fully agree. I don't think that should be the main issue. I think there's bigger issues in Kosovo which we as youth should tackle. From what we have met with young people and what we have gathered, I think young people care about the environment. They care about education. They care about their jobs. But the youth doesn't know how to act on those. They don't know what they should do to raise their voice. And that's what I think, that's personally one of my goals as well, is to help young people in sharing those opinions and sharing their voices into, hey, this matters for me, and this is what I want to see in my country. In terms of the education system, I think we can all agree that Kosovo needs a reform on that topic. My suggestion as a young person would be, if there is any progress, I think young people want to are very visual learners, and I think we want to see that progress. It's not only in the news that progress should be shared. I think why not have a website which shows here is where we are and here is where we want to be, and this is the steps that we are taking in this process. That's just my.
Thank you very much. Mr. Kupovci, you just got some issues to.
Thank you for your questions. I would like to give some reflections with regard to the changes in the education system, which are more than necessary. Just for your information, the Ministry is currently working on developing the new Kosovo education strategic plan for the period 2022 other hand, education is an important part of the government program, which is public, and you can see that there is a separate chapter and even action plan about education. All it is a complex issue which needs to be targeted in different ways across different levels of the education system. Looking at the early childhood development, Ambassador is right, we have a very low participation in this field, and it is inherited from 80s, if I may say so. Kosovo always had a very low participation in early childhood development, but now the government is planning to construct 80 preschool institutions in the next 4 years, and we have support from the European Union with respect to that. It is part of our economic reform program. It is included also in the new strategy and in the budget for 2022, so that we could start next year. And this should lead to the increase of participation from 8 to 24% in 4 years. This is one of the indicators that we have developed, and we are speaking about the age group from 0 to 6. And if you look only at the age group from 3 to 6, which is more critical in terms of receiving services from early childhood education, currently we have 38% of these children included, and in 4 years, after 4 years, we should reach 64% if this plan is implemented, of course. And in the first year, we really worked hard in order to have it in the next year's budget, and also are in communication with the EU for further funding from IPA 2023 and 24. When we look at compulsory, on the other hand, don't forget that we are going through a phase of population decline, which will continue in the next few decades. So there will be, unfortunately, free spaces even in schools for early childhood development in the future, and this will help us increase participation in this level. When it comes to compulsory education, the focus is on improvement of textbooks, which is starting by adaptation of the new law on textbooks, which needs to make the textbook approval process more credible than it is now, and implementation of the new Kosovo curriculum, which has not been implemented properly. On the other hand, we had 2 years of pandemic, which was a major setback for the education system. So now, instead of reforming the education system, we have to deal very often with the consequences of pandemic, which produced large learning losses, particularly at this level of compulsory education. With regard to vocational education and training, focus is on better links between education programs and labor market, which requires involvement of businesses in this sector, and this should contribute to narrowing that skills gap, which we already agree that exists in our labor market. Education financing is something that has to change. Currently, for example, if you look at the university education in Kosovo, 90% of government grant is used for salaries, for teacher salaries, and this is where we have to thank unions for their long-term activity in this field. And of course, the government will deal with all reasonable requests coming from unions, but not necessarily support the unions in a way that would cause damage to the education system. So there is a certain funding formula which has to be followed, and we came to the conclusion that formula is not that bad, but its implementation has not been proper. until now, and this is why we are in this situation. So in next couple of years, we will have to look carefully at the network of schools as well, in order to really merge those schools which cannot be justified from the economic perspective, and in that way create a more efficient system which would better serve young people of this age. When it comes to higher education, what the government can do is introduce some order in public higher education financing, which we intend to do by applying the so-called performance contracts for public universities. It is already in the law, but it has not been implemented until now. So they've received certain funding, annual funding, and they could do literally whatever they wanted with that funding, and strengthen the quality assurance mechanisms, which is in our case the Kosovo Accreditation Agency. So we have recently sent to the government the new law on Kosovo Accreditation Agency, and we believe that by not interfering with KEA business, they will on their own become an agency with more integrity, and the agency which would then apply those European standard guidelines, and that should be an important aspect of improvement of higher education quality. Then most probably not every university or every college would intend to have all kinds of study programs which they can objectively not maintain in terms of offering an acceptable quality.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rezin.
Yes, shortly on a question addressed to us about the visa issue. I don't want to talk about visa. To be honest, I can travel forever. But I would just have a question for you. How many of you have ever been to Europe? Can you please raise your hand? Yes, because you are RIT students, because you have more opportunities. If you ask the same question to students at the University of Prishtina, I've been teaching, I've taught there for 21 years. And it is not my concern. It is the concern of young people that I see and discuss and work every day. I run a program of political education for 20 years now. And issues such as visa has been their concern. Do you know what young people in rural areas discuss? Their only concern is how to get a visa and go to Europe. I'm not saying that it's Europe's fault. When we discuss about our future in Europe, that's a legitimate question. When can Kosovars, or how can Kosovars feel what Europe is, and how can Kosovars be part of Europe? I'm not saying that this is my concern. This is the concern of people, as is the concern of 5 non-recognizers. We talk about sport, then we have to go and play in Spain, and our team deals with situations as what we have. So this is when we talk about our vision for Europe. These are concerns, Kosovar concerns. So where are the answers? The answers are within Kosovo institutions, within Kosovo civil society, the population. You have a greater role to play as civil society in asking more from our government, being more monitoring, taking part in policy-making process. So these are problems that we have to deal, and we have to shape our future. But these are real problems. On the issue of having opportunities to take part, then I will share a very positive story. The program I run for 20 years is implemented under the auspices of Council of Europe. And for 20 years, Kosovars have the same place in the program as all their peers, 22 from 22 different countries. We go to Strasbourg every year without no problem, and it is inclusive. And we're really thankful to the Council and to the program that enabled that Kosovo, or did not leave Kosovo out of this format. So there are opportunities, there's still way to go, but there are obstacles that must be addressed for us to have a full European vision and future.
Thank you very much. Gentlemen, the floor is yours, and I just encourage you not to take questions, but also share your views, make proposals.
Yes.
Please. Here's the first. Or the second.
Greetings to everyone, the panelists and the students. I'm a medical student in the University of Prishtina, so I'm very thankful that you invited us also here to express our views on how we would like to see Europe. I'm very pleased that the topic is this, but I find it pretty ironic that you're asking us how we would like to see Europe in 10 years when we don't know how Europe looks like right now. I've been to Europe only once, and yes, we have our own views about climate change and navigation and everything, but the topic is Europe that the generation of Kosovo would like to see. That's why the visa liberalization is very important, and that's why we keep stressing it. And I would agree with everything that has been said, and I know that there's work to be done and there's procedures, but that's the main concern for us. Not only because we like to travel and see beautiful places and everything, but because we have to share our experiences with the peers in Europe. We have to learn more from them. We have to understand about their work ethic, and we want to know more about their cultures. And if I would give an answer, of course, the Europe that we would like to see in 10 years is a Europe with Kosovo in it. That's pretty important to us. And everything that comes with that is also important, but that's the main topic today, and that's my insight on this.
Thank you very much. Please. Here.
Hi everyone. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers and the panelists for taking time to be in this event. My name is Sabran Muya, and I am a student of Corvinus University in Budapest. I've had the great privilege of actually meeting my peers in Europe. And in regards to the question of what Europe we would like to see, I feel like the youth of Kosovo wants a Europe that knows and accepts us. And we have to go back to the point of visa liberalization, because as my peers said, it's not just an issue of going to Europe and seeing sights, going to Europe as tourists. It's not just traveling, it's about sharing stories. I feel like the youth of Kosovo has a lot to share, and whenever I talk to European peers, I've heard most of the cases, people that I talk to knew of Kosovo, but they never knew what Kosovo is right now. They don't have updated information on post-99 Kosovo. They are not aware that Kosovo is a country that has one of the most vibrant democracies in Europe today. They're not aware that Kosovo is a country that organizes one of the most fairest elections and safest elections in a way. They're not aware that Kosovo is a country that the average of women in parliament is almost 5% bigger than that of the EU and almost 10% bigger than that of the world. They're not aware of a Kosovo that has guaranteed representation of minorities in parliament, in decision-making bodies. So we go back to, I have to slightly disagree with you, it is on how important visa liberalization is, because we have so many stories to tell. So many talented people, so many hardworking people are part of the youth in Kosovo, part of this majority of the population. So our stories are null and void, our experiences are null and void when there is no audience for our voices to be heard. So that is the importance of visa liberalization, because we need an audience. Because in order for anything to be done, that audience needs to know what Kosovo stands for, and not just the idea of a war-torn country. So it is really, really important that we get to share our stories. And also a question is, how are there any steps being taken towards sharing our experiences with the world? Not just from the youth and the people of Kosovo, but from UN bodies, EU bodies as well. Because we are aware that it is ministers who decide, but will the ministers know what Kosovo stands for in regards to visa liberalization? Because it has been almost 3 years that the conditions have been met, yet our stories have not been heard. Thank you very much again for your time.
Thank you very much. Next one. The gentleman, please.
Hi everyone, I'm Hardin. Is it? Yes. Hi everyone, I'm Hardin Ward. I am a junior here at RITK. My question for Mr. Suzio. So, without dwelling much on the political situation of Kosovo and Europe, is the Office of the European Union willing to increase the cooperation on cultural exchanges and partnerships in educational institutions? And if it's willing to do so and planning to do so, when will it happen? And the next question for Mr. Popovci. I'm very glad that the ministry is working on improving the educational system and textbooks, but we know that one of the problems is on the teachers and professors. Is the ministry working and planning on having a vetting on the field of education? If so, when will it happen? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And yes, please.
Okay. Greetings to everyone. I'm Andret and I'm a student in the University of Prishtina. I don't have a question. I could say it's more a concern, and I totally agree with Ms. Krezio about we have a problem at first with our neighbor. And just as an information, we share a borderline of 351 kilometers with our neighbor Serbia. What I'm more concerned is about, I think everyone here knows that at least twice a year we have tensions in the northern part of Kosovo. So I think before that we go in Europe, we should face the problems inside Kosovo. So we should at least, aside the negotiations and the corruption, I think the problem is more with our neighbor. How I saw it as a children and right now as a student is that I for sure know if Serbia goes inside European Union before us, I think for me as a student of Kosovo it could be a really big problem.
Thank you very much. Anyone else would like to? Yes, please.
Hello. I'm sorry, I'm Sever Krasnici. I'm also a student of the University of Prishtina. And I too don't have a question. I more like have an impression about this visa case. I know it's not that simple for you to answer, even as an embassy, on this topic specifically, because you're not directly involved in it. But what I would say is that until visa liberalization happens, in what time it will happen, I don't know. But until it happens, I think that embassies and Western countries, especially those of Europe, in Prishtina should have more directly relations with the students, because students and young people don't have the time, as Ms. Krezio said, if you ask young people in rural zones, the only case is when I'm getting that visa. So students don't have, and young people don't have much time. I think what would be a solution would be only the direct relations to the youngsters and to the students in general.
Thank you very much.
So, if I may, and then I'll pass it on to some of my
Yes,
other colleagues.
yes,
Okay, so I'm Fiorita and I'm a student here at RTK as well. I think what we have noticed is that we have a lot of barriers and a lot of concerns. But what I didn't hear from the students, which I would really like to hear, is that we are breaking these barriers as well. We have young people from Kosovo breaking barriers through sport, in the Olympics, through songs, through music, through film, through art, and through education. My concern would be that we don't have young people in decision-making places. I want to see more people like Eris sitting in a panel, speaking to us and taking our concerns. That's important to me as a student, that I can identify with someone in the panel that I know is listening to my concerns. And I think that's what I would like to see for the future of Europe as well as for the future of Kosovo. I want to see more young people taking charge, with more young people in decision-making places, rather than just observing and sharing a concern. And I think that's what's really important for us. Now, obviously, all the issues that we've been discussing are important. However, they are issues that are being discussed very thoroughly from politicians. But as students, we have to think about how we can break barriers in different ways. If we are putting pressure on politics, and that's taking a while, let's take other routes as well. At RT Kosovo, we give out a lot of scholarships because we want to see everyone having these opportunities and seeing the Europe that we all want to see. And we all want to work together towards that. So I think that's something that I would like to ask as a question to the panels is, how are we supporting these programs of sport, of music, of film, and of education so that we can work together towards the vision that we want to see? Aside with the political problems that are always ongoing and will always be, not just for Kosovo, for every other country as well. I think that's what I really want to see is, how are we supporting the youth? Because that's very important to me, and I'm very glad that we have young people here today, and I'm very glad that we have Eris especially here today as a panelist, because I feel that when I see a young person and I identify in a decision-making process, that to me is the vision I want to see.
Thank you, Fioretta, and please give the microphone to the Vice President of Student Government, RIT.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for all of this. My name is Dren Cheda. I'm a fourth-year student here at RITK, and this year I'm acting as Vice President of the Student Government. I want to share with you a story and extract from that a recommendation and a question to the panel. It's true, as Ms. Kriosio said, that those of us which had a chance to travel to EU countries are privileged. And I am one of those few that have that privilege. And last semester I was the beneficiary of an Erasmus Plus scholarship. And I did an exchange semester in an EU country. And I want to tell you how I felt during my stay at the host institution. As a citizen of Kosovo, apart from going there as a student for advancing myself, I had a double duty of acting as a sort of ambassador for my country. Every time that I'm abroad, I feel this responsibility to show the people of Europe what we're worth. So I give my maximum effort to show how good people from Kosovo can be. I don't just do it for myself, but I feel like I'm representing my country. And this feeling, I think, is maybe a good story to tell, but should be unnecessary, because we should have more opportunity to show what we can do. And this is where I want to direct the panel to my question. There's a feeling among peers that these sort of opportunities for traveling to the EU, especially on educational programs, are diminishing. There's this feeling that the sympathy that we had from the international community in the post-war years, where we had a lot of aid, a lot of these scholarships, now there's less scholarships and programs like the Young Cell, Erasmus, Fulbright. They're still active. A lot of people are afraid that they'll be active for the coming years. And what's for sure is that they are in smaller quantities. So this is a question I want to ask. probably directed to the EU Commissioner and to the Deputy Minister on Education. Another question that I want to ask is that in this room we all seem to agree that Kosovo is heading in the right direction, but I would like to talk about pace, because going in the right direction is not enough. If it takes us until we are retired to reach EU, then I guess we're missing the point. So I want to ask the question from both government's perspective and from the outside, from the EU perspective, is Kosovo at the right pace for its path towards EU integration? Thanks.
Thank you very much. Can I have the microphone to Mr. Dean, please?
Thank you. So the question I had is more in the data that you present. As an engineer, always work with the numbers and the graphs. First, I'm very happy that I hear that our alums are doing good and they feel ready for the job market. Although, they're doing good, I'm not very happy because I still have 5% that they don't, get the job within the 6 months that our expectation is. Okay, that's important for me to get to that 100%, But good that you guys doing good, and keep the good work. Now, what I heard over here is the unemployment in Kosovo is high. At the same time, I heard that there is a lack of workforce. There is an issue over there. Why we have unemployment at the same time we have a lack of workforce. At the same time, the number of the graduates from the universities is 50% more. Okay? Are we producing graduates that they do not fit the job market in Kosovo? Okay? That is, because again, I'm looking at our model. I'm in the United States, when I want to offer a new degree program, the first thing I have to do, I have to prove to the states, basically, the graduates from that program, they will have a job. If they don't have it, if I don't have that proof, they never let me to offer a degree program. Doesn't matter if I'm a private or is a public university. Okay? Do we have a models over here, to ensure that we produce the right people? Now the question comes about the visa. Now that's going to raise a flag for me. Is the young people over here they're so concerned about the visa because when they graduate, they don't have the opportunity over here and they want to leave to reach the opportunity, or is something else? I do understand sharing a story, culture, those things is important, but what's the root of the demand for the visa? Is not having opportunity here or to have, sharing culture?
Thank you very much, Mr. Dean. A few questions, challenges, Ambassador?
Well, thank you for those questions, difficult and challenging questions. One, I would probably start with visa liberalization. Again, I am frustrated as you are frustrated, probably. And I understand the very need for that. And I would answer basically I would like to start by saying that clarify one issue. Visa liberalization is for tourist visa for 60 days. It does not apply to any student visas or labor visa or anything like that. So it's basically tourist visa for Schengen area. So from my perspective, it's not about this. It is partly about this practical access to Europe, but I think it's more of the symbol of relationship between EU and Kosovo. And again, that's why I hope that we can have a progress in coming presidencies. You know that it is again, it's a council which is chaired by the presidency country. It is now Slovenia, then it's France, Czech Republic, Sweden. I think after Sweden, Spain actually is chairing the EU. So and again, it needs to be a joint effort. It needs to be a joint effort between EU institutions and the Kosovo government and the member states to get there. And again, I think that some presidencies are also careful about putting in an agenda, because if you put in an agenda and then you fail, there is no sufficient support, that would be the worst thing which can happen. So I think it needs to be well prepared and carefully thought through what exactly is doing everybody who is interested. Which leads me to the second point, which I think is quite important for Kosovo, and this is this image of Kosovo outside. And I think that, again, it's an important issue, and I fully agree with you, there is not enough information, and probably there are still some misconception about what Kosovo is. But again, from my perspective, this is something the government needs to think again about, because it's the government who can initiate some kind of marketing, would call it rebranding of Kosovo into a modern European country. And it can be done. I also had the privilege to serve as a diplomat in Slovenia. If you think about today, Slovenia, is it a post-Yugoslav country? It is, but no one thinks about that as a post-Yugoslav country. Or if you think about Estonia, is Estonia a post-Soviet country? Everybody kind of has a perception of Estonia as a modern country with IT sector and Angry Birds and other things, Skype. So, but you need again to have a program which you put a lot of money into it, a lot of good people, for example, good ambassadors also, and then you can succeed. But you need to do it. You need to have a logo for the country. You need to have a modern people who do that. Again, it's probably a little bit of marketing, but someone needs to think about how Kosovo is perceived in Europe and what can be done to improve this image. And I think it's important. It needs this is something which actually requires, again, focus, political focus, but also money and good people. And it can be done. I believe it can be done. And it should be done. On our assistance, in general, of course, I have a lot of people in my office who are kind of good experts on all kinds of things. But again, as I said in my first intervention, what we need is a clear understanding of what government wants. And frankly speaking, the economic investment plan, which the Commissioner mentioned, it was developed and agreed in October last year. The Commissioner traveled here to present it. He again mentioned it's 9 billion of basically grants, which would generate 30 billion, or additional more than 20 billion of loans and very kind of advantageous kind of conditions. And then he presented some ideas and some sectors where it should be put in. We have still not heard from the Kosovo government what exactly the Kosovo government approach to this is. Neither from the previous government nor from this one. We still are not clear whether you want to build a highway here or railway here or a new kindergarten. I mean, I'm not still hearing what exactly is the priority of the Kosovo government. And this is something which the Kosovo government needs to put together. And then we would be happy to follow the Kosovo government lead. And if the Kosovo government tells us, put a lot of money into kindergarten and basic school and Erasmus and everything, we would be happy to do that. But we need also, we are not here to tell these things that you need to build, I don't know what, high-speed railway to anywhere. We are just here to assist the government implementing the government priorities. And the government needs to be clear on what exactly it wants. And I believe education should be one of the priority. Healthcare should be priority, obviously. And there's a number of things which should be done. But again, I'm not the Prime Minister of this country. I'm just here to assist the government in implementing the government's program. On the dialogue, I think that, again, I would agree with the colleague over there, that this is a very important issue, relationship between Serbia and Kosovo. I would like to make very clear, without the dialogue agreement, neither Kosovo nor Serbia can progress on the road to the European Union. It's really like that. If this is not done, then neither Serbia nor Kosovo can enter the European Union. So I'd like to assure you that Serbia cannot enter the European Union without clarifying relationship with Kosovo. But finally, on the enlargement process,
this is something which is sometimes frustrating and sometimes difficult to understand. But again, it's a substantial issue. It's a long process. I am from the Czech Republic. It took exactly 8 years from the application to membership to membership. For Croatia, my understanding is they applied formally in 2003. They got into European Union in 2013. Kosovo still has not applied. So there is still not this time to start the clock. But once it can apply, I actually believe that when Kosovo starts negotiating, a number of those things would actually not be so difficult because, again, a lot of laws are there, a number of things are in place, including the vibrant democracy. So, again, but it takes time because you need to negotiate on everything. And again, this is the basic tool we are showing how Kosovo is doing. It is the report we do every year. This year, again, we reported limited progress. So, and the progress is actually an approximation of Kosovo to the European standards. So certainly there is a room for progress and faster progress, but it's also in the hands of you and everybody. Finally, on last point, and I think the Deputy Minister also mentioned that the key instrument for us to actually make the higher education better and more kind of adjusted to the market is this accreditation agency. There were serious issues with this agency in the past. It was actually even excluded from the European Association of Accreditation Agency because of different issues. One of them, of course, political influence into decision making, and maybe some other issues. But we are hoping that now, with the new government, we can actually put this into order and back on track, also reapplying for this European Association. And then this is the key tool to actually, and it must be independent of accreditation. And then let's hope that this can improve.
Thank you, Ms. Kreze.
Issue over and over again. And one more final thing regarding the political issue of Kosovo and our future in Europe. I think why it's important to address and to speed the pace, not of EU integration, but the finalization, to finalize the Kosovo-Serbia dialogue is because it has been suffocating the entire political debate and reforms inside Kosovo. That's why Kosovo, and it is a precondition for us to start thinking and turning the page into real reforms, into real thinking of them joining the EU. We do measure polls. We have an annual poll that we do, and the results we get from our polls is that Kosovo citizens don't hope that they will join Europe in a very near future. So that's why the visa liberalization and the free movement is important to Kosovars to get a sense, or at least one step closer to Europe. Regarding Fioreta's question, to see more people like Aris in the government institutions, in the panels, I agree totally, but I will also want to make one remark that Kosovo government is pretty young. I mean, we have young people in Kosovo government, so we are not lacking young and fresh blood in the institutions. We lack a little bit more active participation in the civil society, in the decision making process. So this is a call for young people in Kosovo to be more engaged in the processes. How do we push forward, or how do we break? There are different ways, as we mentioned. There are opportunities. We gather them through different projects. These young people have opportunities to show, take part. We have a girl this year in the program who she did 7 summits. She climbed the 7 summits, and she can talk about the challenges. But these are individual successes. These are individual successes. We need a little bit more structured and ways of how these young people can share their experience, their work with their peers. That's why it's important to move on and speed up the pace in this regard.
Thank you very much, Deputy Prime Minister.
Thank you. So I would like just to go through a couple of questions that relate to the education sector. First was a very sensitive question about vetting in education. So vetting is probably not the first option for the education sector. We are not judiciary, and all analysis in Kosovo show that the quality of education cannot be attributed to poor preparation of teachers as it can be attributed to the lack of responsibility and accountability within the system. So the management structures in the Kosovo system are designed in that way that there is very little, if any, accountability for the outcomes of the education process. If you look, for example, at schools which perform poorly on national tests, then there is no follow-up with those schools. First of all, national tests are far from being ideal. This is where the government needs to step in order to improve them so that they become credible and not are characterized by a lot of cheating and other bad things that then really simply discredits those processes. But we have a plan to offer early retirement plans for teachers. But believe me, I don't think that these people who are close to retirement are a major problem of the Kosovo system. I don't think so. So there is a plan for that in order to employ people who would fit better to the needs of the system, but still this is not going to solve the problem on its own. Now, with support from an EU-funded project, we are reviewing our recruitment system for teachers and school principals, but still it will be the responsibility of municipalities. And in many cases, the municipalities really, shall I say, not to be so blunt, make use of this because employments in education and health sector are the only opportunities for municipal structures to somehow offer, if I can say so, privileges or employment to people who are close to their groups or political parties. So very often these processes have been far from being credible, and this is what needs to be changed. Then I heard a question about the exchange programs. Really, it is not like 2 or 3 years ago when we had this huge USAID funded transformational leadership program with hundreds of students going abroad, and this huge EU funded program supporting the civil service. But I'm happy to inform you that we recently signed a new agreement with the US Embassy on Fulbright program. So there will be more opportunities with Fulbright program. And also we plan to expand opportunities within Erasmus for the next year. We have already discussed it with the European Commission. Kosovo is very soon officially joining the Horizon Europe, another EU program. I think the agreement the Commissioner Gabriel on 7th of December. So there will be more opportunities for our researchers for mobility. And Dr. Shahrabi raised this issue of high unemployment. Yes, it is true. The accreditation agency has some filters which look at employment perspectives when higher education institutions submit their programs for accreditation. And apparently, those filters have to be improved, because what we have now is 5 faculties of law in the public sector, and I don't know how many in the private sector, and we have hundreds of unemployed lawyers. So we are creating structural unemployment in this case. Of course, many of those lawyers work as taxi drivers or waiters or I don't know what, but they do not really work as lawyers. So that's the problem that we have to look at. And as I told you, one way to address this issue is through these performance contracts, when the government needs to be very careful when we negotiate what kind of programs will be supported in public institutions. But to be very honest with you, first of all, we have to build our own capacity in order to be able to enter into such negotiations. If you would tell us, sign performance contracts today, I will have to respond that the government currently does not have that capacity. So it will require some time so that in our organizational structure, we have units and people who will deal with those challenges. And I believe that it will improve the situation. And in last 2 years, really young people have also changed their attitude. So they are not running anymore to public universities in July and September when these enrollment terms are, but they are choosing very carefully what they are going to study. So I also believe that with more work on career counseling and with raising the awareness of young people about the necessity to have better links between higher education and labor market, the higher education institutions would really need to review those programs which kind of lead to structural unemployment.
Thank you, Mr. Chanaku.
Yes, I know we are towards the end, and I try to shoot some of you didn't agree with me, and that's fine as well. My first question for the audience is that I would like to know by show of hands how many of you feel part of Europe or European. So there's a very low number. I think one of the biggest things, if someone wants to feel part of Europe, you have to share the values that Europe has, right? One of the biggest ones, I agree, is having visas and moving freely in Europe. That's I'm not like lowering the value that has, but I think that the people of Kosovo and the youth see visa as the ticket into solving every other issue as well. The values that make us European are not only visas. It's also having a good education system and having good environment that we live in. In Kosovo, I think we can all agree that the air quality isn't very good. And there's a lot of trash as well, which is not being managed. Those other values which we share as Europeans is what makes us Europeans. So yes, visa is, I think, the biggest one, but why not work into the other ones as well simultaneously? It's not like the ticket which will solve all our other issues as well. In terms of opportunity, I think what we need in Kosovo is the opportunity of staying in Kosovo. Young people are very encouraged into moving outside because they don't feel like they are valued in Kosovo and they have a place here. So I think we should, that's why my concern is we're focusing this whole like conversation with visas so we can give like people the opportunity like to go outside, but we're not like focused on the opportunity of staying in Kosovo or even like coming back like for students who do exchange like programs or something else. Give them the opportunity of, hey, you've done your master's or whatever in this country, awesome. Now here's like this place here for you in Kosovo. So that's just my.
Thank you very much for these valuable contributions. As we are approaching the final end of the conference, I would give the floor to the audience for a quick round of reactions or opinions, if you have. Yes, here.
Thank you very much. My name is Matt Cullen, and I'm with USAID. It's a pleasure to be here in the audience with these panelists and mostly also hearing from you. I wanted to speak at the end and hear what all the youth have to say. One thing that occurred to me that many of you have said is the importance of youth being stakeholders and what happens in development, what happens in even the perspectives of diplomacy. And I think Kosovo, one of the advantages here is the knowledge that all of you have, the ability that all of you have to have a voice with leaders who come through, like a deputy minister and other ambassadors. USA is proud of our work that we've done with, many of you have probably heard of TLP, and of course Fulbright, which we continue to be proud of. I want to thank the deputy minister here. We are launching 2 new activities that will come online in the spring. One is focused on bringing workforce and the labor market closer together here in Kosovo. And the other is focused on bringing higher education and the labor market, the private sector, closer together in Kosovo, because so much of what happens, so much of the future, as you know, will be the successes that happen in Kosovo. Many of these graduates that have come from other places, your experiences in other countries, have been crucial because you brought that perspective back so you can go to government, you can go to other ministers, and you can impact your own communities throughout Kosovo. One of the things that happened after the TLP program, we launched something called Up to Youth, again, with the ministry. One of the focuses there was being able to impact more young Kosovans than a small number that would be very expensive to send to the United States, but rather how can we impact different communities, diverse communities, minorities, and help elevate them to give them the skills to not just be recipients of aid, but rather stakeholders playing a part and impacting their communities with small grants, funds, and what you see is people eager to change their communities with a small amount of money, with a small amount of assistance, what they do. And I think about everyone I'm seeing today, and I think about how you are the first generation in a country, that you were born, many of you may be born around 2003, 2002. You're the first generation that has that ability to impact things here. So many of the issues you're talking about are hugely consequential. But I think every day you have that ability to change things here as stakeholders in your own future. And I'm sure many of you will be surprised that in 5 or 10 years you'll be sitting here as leaders of this country also. So thank you for having me today. It's an honor to be here with this community as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Gentlemen, please.
I wanted to go back to a point that we discussed in these answers. All of the answers are really welcomed, I guess, I think, by all of us, and thank you so much for taking your time. I just wanted to point out another thing. His Excellency mentioned the fact that if we get visa-free travel, it would be for tourist purposes only. So it would be a short period of time, and that's the whole point. Because when we are talking about being able to go to Europe and see Europe, it's not just about going there to remain there and if that was the case, it would be illegal because you would go there in a tourist quality. However, you would remain seeking asylum in any way. But the issue is the fact of seeing how good it can be. Because when it comes to sharing European values and feeling European, I believe that they're not mutually exclusive. Because we have had those European values way before it was even a discussion. Historically, we have held those European values of wanting to have to make our own decisions democratically, of having freedom, of working towards all of the views that Europe withholds right now. So the issue is not just sharing those values. The issue is also with seeing how good it can be. People who have never had the opportunity of, especially in rural areas, they have never had the opportunity to see how good living conditions can actually be. So with people getting the opportunity to see Europe and to see this pedestal of development that we all think of it being, will give us a refreshed idea of what we can become. Because we share the values, we share the drive, we share the work ethic, and we share the talent. However, we do not have morale, if I can say so myself. Because we have grown up in a place that has not been really proportionally developed. So getting the opportunity to see the good that we can reach is, I think, what is needed for the youth to thrive in the way that I know that we can.
Thank you very much.
So, thank you. I'm getting back to the education topic again because, speaking sincerely, this has been the main concern that I've been holding in grudge in my country. So, thank you a lot, Mr. Popovsky, for mentioning the problem, which is nepotism and corruption in political parties and those who make the decision in municipalities of who is going to be the principal of a certain school or who are going to take the positions of being the teachers. The nepotism and the corruption are those main factors I do see in municipalities and this decision making on who is going to be the next principal of a certain school or who are going to be the certain teachers of that certain school. That I think is a major problem in terms of the education quality. So, and thank you for noticing that problem. And I know that you, before 2015, if I'm correct, this thing hasn't been this way. The principal of certain schools in every municipality in Kosovo were decided from the Ministry of Education. So why can't we bring back this policy again? Is this because of the formality of implementation and formulation of the law, or how can this be undone? So, if you didn't understand my question, thank you.
Thank you very much. And the last.
Yeah, just the last
one. Thank you. I want to go maybe like a brighter future, see, and go past the liberalization thing, and just think that we're part of Europe as just as the other countries are. So what's a Europe that a young girl from Kosovo would like to see is a Europe that supports human rights. Especially, I want to go back to economic and social rights. What I've come to see, I come to pass the obstacle of going to Europe and see my peers from not just Europe but also from countries like Asia and the US. And what I've seen is that the most common problem is always the social problems and the most not being respected those social rights. Especially, I've seen that most young people are those people that are homeless. Most young people that work are the same people that lack the ability to become independent as they want because of the discrimination between wages, especially when it comes to students and not graduate students. So I would just like to see, say an opinion, I would just like to see a consensus between all European countries when it comes to offering young generations, especially students in this case, an opportunity to, say, internships or other opportunities that will gain them experience in the especially labor market, which I would think would help also, say, lower this migration crisis between, especially when it comes to employment and seeking for a brighter future.
Thank you very much. And as a final round to the panel, what kind of advice would you give to the young population, Kosovo, in a maximum of 2 sentences? I know I start on the reverse with Alice.
Yeah, I think I said this in the beginning, and I will continue to say it again and again. My advice for the young people of Kosovo is find what you care about, whether that is visa, environment, whatever that is for Kosovo, and share your voice and be active members of the society. That's the only thing that I wish that the young people would be more active members of the society.
Great. Ms. Liazin?
In civil society, all we do is ask and work with young people and ask them to really engage and be a little bit more pay attention to what they care about and engage in political processes, engage in decision making.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Minister.
Thank you. I will respond to the question maybe after the session, so that I don't take very much of your time. My advice would be that young people should always seek appreciation for their specific position, and this is best done by participating actively in civic and political life.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Sunil.
Well, I think that what is important, that you trust yourself and trust your country. That's the important thing. I also am reminded when I was posted in the US, there was this bumper sticker that was saying no fear. I think that's a good advice as well.
And lower actions.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Allow me to avoid any kind of conclusion to draw now, because what we are doing now with my colleagues to sit down and summarize what has been said here, and then we will upload your proposals and your voice to the conference website. So to support it, please fill the questionnaire you got at the registration and leave at the desk at the exit. So, ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our conference today. Thank you to the panel for their valuable contribution. I ask the audience to return this with a round of applause. Many thanks also to the host, Embassy of Hungary in Prishtina, and also Rochester Institute of Technology, to host us today. Thank you very much. And I am personally to extend my gratitude to the President of the Student Government of the University, Ms. Violetta Istretti, and her team, and the technical staff also for your cooperation in organizing this event. And finally, thanks to you all for your contribution and for your valuable recommendations you have made. So thank you for all participants and for your contribution. Goodbye.